A cold October wind tore down Lexington Avenue, slicing straight through Ethan's thin jacket like it wasn't even there. Traffic roared past in restless waves, yellow cabs, delivery trucks, impatient drivers leaning on their horns. The city never slowed down. It never cared. 10-year-old Ethan stood on the corner beneath a flickering streetlight, gripping a cardboard box filled with neatly arranged candy bars and small plastic bags of homemade fudge. His fingers were red from the cold, knuckles cracked and dry. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, trying to keep feeling in his toes. "Fresh candy, homemade fudge, $5, he called out, his voice thin but determined. Some people walked around him as if he were invisible. Others gave him quick, pitying glances before hurrying on. A few frowned, maybe annoyed, maybe uncomfortable. But Ethan didn't stop. Every dollar meant antibiotics. Every dollar meant another day his mom didn't have to skip her medication. At 3 p.m., he was a fifth grader. At 4 p.m., he was the man of the house. Their apartment was on the 4th floor of a run-down brick building in Queens. The elevator hadn't worked in years. The hallway smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals and something older, like damp carpet and tired dreams. Sarah used to laugh loudly, used to dance in the kitchen while making pancakes on Sunday mornings. Ethan remembered that clearly. Now she moved slowly, carefully. Her illness had taken weight from her body and brightness from her eyes, but not her kindness. "You shouldn't stay out so late," she told him every evening. "I'm fine, Mom," Ethan would answer, forcing a smile. "I sold almost everything today." He never mentioned the way older boys sometimes shoved him. Never mentioned the embarrassment when classmates drove past in their parents' cars and pretended not to see him. He protected her from that. Because she already carried enough. Across the East River, in a penthouse, wrapped in glass and skyline views, Michael Carter adjusted his cufflinks before another conference call. The New York skyline stretched endlessly outside his office windows. The city glittered with opportunity and distraction. Michael had built his investment firm from nothing. Long nights, brutal risks, strategic brilliance. Now his name carried weight on Wall Street, but inside his own home, he was a stranger. Emma sat at the kitchen island that evening, swinging her legs gently while Margaret prepared dinner. "Do you think Dad will eat with us tonight?" she asked quietly. Margaret hesitated. "He'll try, sweetheart." But they both knew what that meant. When Michael finally walked in, still on Bluetooth, Emma jumped off her chair. "Dad, guess what? I'm in the school play." He held up one finger, the universal "just a second." That second lasted 7 minutes. By the time he finished the call, Emma's excitement had folded in on itself. "That's great, kiddo," he said absently. "That's really great." She nodded. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. The day of the accident began gray and heavy. Clouds hung low over Central Park. The wind carried the sharp scent of coming rain. Emma had been quiet all morning. She kept replaying her father's forgotten promise from the night before. He had said they would watch a movie together. He hadn't come home until after she fell asleep. She slipped away from Margaret while the older woman answered a phone call. Emma walked toward the edge of the park, past joggers and dog walkers, her thoughts louder than the traffic. "If he doesn't notice when I'm home, will he notice if I'm gone?" She stepped closer to the street. A black SUV sped through the intersection. A horn screamed. Time slowed. Across the sidewalk, Ethan saw it. He didn't think. He didn't calculate. He ran. He shoved her hard, harder than he meant to, and they both tumbled onto the pavement just as the SUV tore past, missing her by inches. Emma's heart pounded violently in her chest. "You're okay," Ethan said, breathless. "You're okay." And then came the sound of brakes screeching. Michael's car. He jumped out, adrenaline exploding through him. He saw only chaos. Only a scruffy boy grabbing his daughter. Rage overrode logic. "What are you doing to her?" he shouted, grabbing Ethan by the jacket. "I saved her," Ethan shot back, eyes flashing. "Dad, stop! He saved me!" Emma cried. But fear is loud. Fear makes monsters out of good men. "Stay away from my daughter," Michael growled, shoving Ethan backward. Ethan stumbled but didn't fall. For a split second, their eyes met. Michael saw defiance. Ethan felt humiliation. Then he turned and walked away. He didn't pick up the candy box he'd dropped. That night, Michael couldn't escape the image. Not the near accident. The boy's face. Not anger, not guilt. Just quiet dignity. The next morning, he canceled 2 meetings, something he almost never did. "Find him," he told his assistant. "I need his address." When Michael stood inside Ethan's apartment later that week, the air felt different than his penthouse. It smelled like soup simmering on a stove, like laundry detergent, like survival. Sarah sat slowly in a chair across from him. "My son said you yelled at him," she said gently. Michael swallowed. "I was wrong." He explained everything, listened to everything. The more he heard about Ethan, about the candy, the bills, the late nights, the smaller he felt. He thought about Emma, about what would have happened. "I'd like to pay for your treatment," he said finally. Sarah's pride flickered in her eyes. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity," Michael replied. "It's gratitude." The weeks that followed changed everything. Michael arranged specialists, covered hospital expenses. Ensured Ethan didn't have to work after school anymore. The first time Ethan came to the penthouse, he stood awkwardly near the doorway. Emma ran to him. "I'm really glad you came," she said. They played board games that night, laughed, argued about rules, ate pizza on the living room floor, something Michael had never allowed before. He watched them from the kitchen, and for the first time in years, he closed his laptop before midnight. Slowly, something softened in him. He started leaving work earlier twice a week. He attended Emma's school play. He sat in hospital waiting rooms with Sarah. He listened, really listened. One evening, months later, as golden light filled the new apartment he had arranged for Ethan and Sarah, Michael stood in the doorway watching them all together. Emma teaching Ethan how to roller skate. Sarah smiling, truly smiling. His chest tightened. "Sarah," he said quietly, stepping forward. "I don't just want to help. I want to belong here." She looked at him carefully. "I love you," he continued, "and I care about Ethan like he's my own. I'd like us to be a family." Silence. Then tears. "Yes," Emma gasped. "Does that mean—" Michael knelt in front of Ethan. "If it's okay with you, I'd like to adopt you." Ethan blinked rapidly. He hadn't cried when kids pushed him, hadn't cried in the cold. But this broke him open. "Yeah," he whispered. "I'd like that." Months later, life looked different. Ethan focused on school, joined a basketball team, talked about becoming a doctor one day. So no one has to sell candy for medicine. Emma became brighter, lighter. Michael still ran his company. But now, he left the office when the sun was still up. At dinner one night, Ethan looked around the table, at Sarah, healthy and glowing, at Emma arguing about dessert, at Michael laughing freely. "I never thought my life could look like this," he admitted. Michael squeezed his shoulder. "Money builds buildings," he said softly. "Love builds
Look at the
homes."
city lights. It's beautiful,
Outside,
isn't it?
the city
love
still
this.
rushed forward. But inside their apartment, time felt different, warmer. And it all started with one small act of courage on a windy street corner. Sometimes it only takes one brave choice to rewrite 4 lives forever. Months before Michael gathered the courage to propose becoming one family, things were not that simple. Helping with hospital bills was easy. Showing up emotionally was not. After the accident, Ethan struggled with something he didn't expect. Anger. Not at Michael. At himself. One evening, sitting on the edge of his new bed in the apartment Michael had temporarily arranged for them during Sarah's treatment, he stared at his hands. They were no longer cracked from cold wind, no longer red from standing outside, but they didn't feel like his hands anymore. "I didn't earn this," he muttered. Sarah overheard him. She walked in slowly, still regaining strength. "You earned it the moment you ran into the street," she said softly. "But he yelled at me," Ethan replied. "And now he's just fixing everything." Sarah sat beside him. Sometimes grown-ups don't know how to handle fear. It makes them cruel before it makes them honest. Ethan didn't fully understand, but he nodded. Meanwhile, Emma began changing too. At school, her teacher noticed the shift first. Emma started drawing pictures differently. Before, her drawings had always shown tall buildings, large empty rooms, tiny stick figures standing alone. Now she drew 2 kids in the park, and one tall man standing awkwardly nearby, watching, trying. When asked who that was, she simply said, "That's my dad learning." Michael, however, was facing battles of his own. His business partners noticed. "You've been distracted lately," one of them said during a board meeting. Michael didn't deny it. Numbers that once excited him now felt hollow. Quarterly growth reports didn't compare to the sound of Emma laughing in the living room. But stepping back from work meant risking control. And control had always been his armor. One night, after a tense meeting, he drove alone through the city instead of going home. He passed the corner where Ethan used to sell candy. The street light still flickered. The spot looked smaller than he remembered. And that realization unsettled him. He had built an empire. But a 10-year-old had shown more courage in 1 second than he had in years. The real turning point came 3 weeks later. Sarah's recovery hit a setback. An unexpected complication required another procedure, expensive, delicate, risky. Michael was in Chicago for a high-level investor conference when he got the call. He had a keynote speech in 40 minutes, hundreds of people waiting, millions of dollars riding on the event. He stared at his phone, then at the speech notes, then back at the phone. For the first time in his career, he walked off stage before ever stepping onto it. He left, caught the first flight back, sat in the hospital waiting room beside Ethan. No suit jacket, no assistants, no phone calls, just silence. Ethan glanced at him. "You didn't have to come," he said. "Yes," Michael replied quietly. "I did." That night, something shifted permanently. Not because of money, because of presence. Emma felt it too. For the first time in her life, her father missed work, not for illness, not for business strategy, but for someone else. For them. She climbed into his lap in the hospital hallway. Are we in trouble? She whispered. No, he said, kissing the top of her head. We're finally doing it right. When Sarah came out of surgery successfully, the relief in that waiting room was different than anything Michael had experienced in a boardroom. Ethan hugged him first. It surprised them both. Michael hesitated, then hugged him back tightly. Not politely, not awkwardly, like a father would. Over the next months, blending their lives wasn't effortless. Ethan struggled adjusting to private school. He felt out of place among kids with expensive sneakers and effortless confidence. One afternoon, a classmate mocked him after hearing about his past. Did you really sell candy on the street? That's pathetic. Ethan didn't respond. But that evening, Michael noticed he was quiet. After some gentle pushing, Ethan admitted what happened. Michael didn't call the school, didn't threaten anyone. Instead, he drove Ethan back to that old street corner. They stood there together. Do you feel ashamed? Michael asked. Ethan shook his head slowly. No. Good, Michael said, because I'm proud of you. That was the moment Ethan stopped feeling like a guest and started feeling like a son. Emma and Ethan developed their own rhythm. They argued over TV shows, built blanket forts in the living room, shared secrets late at night. One evening, Emma admitted something quietly. I used to wish something dramatic would happen so Dad would notice me. Ethan looked at her. Well, something dramatic did happen. She smiled. Yeah, you. As for Michael and Sarah, their connection grew slowly, built not on passion alone, but on mutual respect. One night over dinner, Sarah asked him, Why now? He didn't pretend not to understand. Because I spent years building security, he said, but I never built meaning. And you think we're meaning? He smiled softly. I know you are. The proposal didn't happen in a grand restaurant. There were no photographers, no orchestra. It happened in the living room, with pizza boxes on the table, with Emma and Ethan pretending not to listen from the hallway. When Sarah said yes, the kids ran in before Michael even finished standing up. Laughter filled the room, the kind that echoes into memory. The adoption process took time, paperwork, interviews, evaluations. On the day it became official, Ethan stood in front of the judge, trying to appear calm. Do you understand what this means? The judge asked. Ethan nodded. It means I don't have to be strong alone anymore. The courtroom fell silent. Even Michael blinked rapidly. A year later, life looked different, but not perfect. Michael still worked hard. But now there were strict no-phone dinners, weekend breakfasts, game nights. Sarah began volunteering at a local community clinic once she fully recovered. Ethan joined the school basketball team and scored his first winning shot in a game Michael actually attended. Emma thrived. She smiled more, talked more, dreamed bigger. One night, as snow began to fall outside their apartment windows, the four of them sat together watching the city lights glow softly through the glass. Ethan spoke first. Do you ever think about how close everything came to being different? Michael nodded slowly. Every day. Emma leaned against Ethan's shoulder. And you're glad it happened? Michael looked at them, at the son who taught him courage, at the daughter who taught him patience, at the woman who taught him humility. Yes, he said firmly. I'm glad. Because the truth was simple. A cold street corner. A split-second decision. One brave child. That was all it took to rebuild a broken man, heal a fragile family, and turn survival into love.